Alrighty, everyone. So this is technically our. Can you guys hear me? Okay, cool. Sorry. Obviously, that happens as I hit record. Anyway, yeah. So this is technically our last like content session this evening, and then obviously I wanted to do an exam set prep NSS kind of session before you write, which I was hoping to be able to have next Thursday, so on the 7th. And obviously, I know that that's not like scheduled because it's not. It's like out of sync. So, do any of you have a clash for that? I know the whole classes and stuff isn't here, but is there, to anyone's knowledge, a clash next week Thursday evening? No? Okay. Cool. Yeah, so then we will okay, so we will have a session next week, Thursday, then. I will send out an announcement, though, to remind everyone. And I'm sorry, I actually just literally realized before I logged on that I hadn't sent any announcements out today. I'm so bad. I mean, this week, I'm so sorry. It's just I've been under a pile of marking. I've got you guys and the second years at the same time. So please bear with me. But I will let everyone know about that. Okay. Yeah, otherwise, so yeah, your assignments, they're looking good so far. Yeah, I basically am nearly there. I'm sorry that yeah, they're going to be a little bit delayed. Technically, I think that the deadline was today, but sorry. But they should be out to you guys Monday, if not Tuesday, the absolute latest. Yeah. Okay. All right. Sorry, I'm also just seeing all the messages on the chat pop up. Yes. Okay. So we're going to do the NSS for the exam next week, Thursday. I will send out an announcement so that everyone knows and it's all on the system and in everyone's inboxes. Okay. I'm so sorry, Wasima. It's going to be okay. Okay. It's going to be okay. It's all about practice now with the stats. And so also, by the way, I learned that we will not be getting a new exam brief because nothing has changed in the module from last year. So that kind of still stands. So yeah, what I can tell you, and we'll go over it next week, but what I can tell you is that there will probably only be 20 marks attributed out of the whole 120 marks to stats. So yeah, it's not too bad. If you guys have access to the exam brief from last year, it should be there in the student materials, but you may not have it. But I will discuss that in the NSS. I don't think I'm allowed to technically share it with you because it's from last year, but I mean, yeah, is what it is. Yeah, so you will get a formula sheet. If it's not a separate piece of paper, then the formula that you need will be on the question paper there in the question where you need it for. Okay, so that is confirmed and that's definite. There will be formulas provided that you need. Okay. I think just very basic things like the mean and whatever, that won't be provided, right? You're expected to know how to work out the little like descriptive things. But yeah, any inferential formula that you would need will be provided to you. Petra, why is there only, yeah, so there is only one past paper because the module was revised last year. So last year was like the first exam that was written like with this textbook with the new curriculum and stuff. So that's why there's only one past paper available to you. But I do have some other papers that weren't like for this module, but they've got questions in them that would be good practice for you guys anyway. So what I'm going to do is kind of cut and paste and compile those together and then give them to you as practice. Okay. But yeah, our main guiding light will be the past paper that is available. Okay. Alrighty. Okay. Yeah, look, it might be like a separate sheet. The formulas might be on the back of the paper. They might just, but the point is that if you need one, it will be given to you. Wherever, because they said, this is why I say this, because this year with the honors paper, they were told they'd be given a separate sheet, and then they weren't. They put the formulas like on the question paper, and so that like confused people. So I'm just putting it out there that you will be given the formula you need somewhere. Okay. When you write. Alrighty. Okay, so I think, okay, does anyone else have any questions, like just on the subject while we're on it? But otherwise, yeah, I will go straight into what we are doing this evening, because there's quite a bit to cover. Okay, so what I'll do is when I upload this recording tomorrow, I will also upload the brief that I have. Okay. But just and I'll put the disclaimer like in big capital letters so that everyone like remembers, is just that it's because the brief was given last year, it doesn't mean that it will be exactly the same in your paper, but the broad stroke rules will obviously apply. Okay. Okay, did any of you guys do the practice exercise from last time? I did share the results, the answers, just yeah, out of interest. How did that go? Did you guys, was it okay? Was everyone too focused on doing the assignment? Yeah, fair. Okay, I understand. But it is there, and the worked example answer is there as well for you. So when you do now get into your exam revision and practice, you've got it there, okay? And then, yeah, I'm going to be providing some more. And then there is, yeah, remember that pack of notes that I made that's on your portal as well. That will be very useful for you, especially coming up to the exam. Okay. Finished REPR, amazing. Yeah, guys, like I know that it's long and it's a lot, and it's especially a lot to have this module at the same time as REPR. I actually don't understand it, but you know, I do what I'm told. But yeah, I do understand, and I know you're all completely like mentally exhausted and everything. And this is a lot of information tonight. It really is. But this is why we record. You can come back to it, and obviously you then have all the resources as well. Okay, and then I will try to work in some kind of like practice exercises into our NSS as well, just so that that's there on that platform. Yeah, so I uploaded a pack of notes a while ago on your page under more resources. It should be there in that lectures, slides and resources tab. I'll also just double check that. Okay. And you also have the workbook that you got like with your module outline, right? Yeah. Yeah, I think the next session, like honestly, I don't mind like setting aside an hour and a half for it because it's just a lot. So if everyone's on board for that, like, you know, it's okay. Not tonight because I do have another thing I have to go to afterwards. But yeah, it's just, I just don't want you guys to be in a state of like extreme panic for the exam, right? Because you can do it and it's not that bad. Once you've studied for it, you understand and you've practiced, it's truly not that bad. So yeah, I want to just try and lessen that anxiety as much as possible. But okay. Anyway, let's go on to our content for now, and let's see how we go. So I know we've been talking about hypothesis. You've learned about hypotheses in REPR, but I want to make sure everyone's on the same page of what a hypothesis is. Okay, so it is an assumption. It is what you think is true that will be tested, okay, in your experiments, in your statistical analysis, in your hypothesis test. Okay, so you must always, when asked to produce a hypothesis, provide both the null hypothesis and the alternate hypothesis. Okay, every year needless marks get thrown away when people only provide the alternate. Please don't. Okay. This can sometimes be a 5-mark question. They can give you a little thing and say, what are the hypotheses for this? And you get like 2 each and then a bonus one for formatting it right, you know? And that's entirely possible to come up. So yeah, going to just make sure that everyone is comfortable. So how we do formulate these, it's coming up now, but remember we use this little H and a 0, and then there's a colon, and you write the words for the null hypothesis, and then for the alternate hypothesis, you can either say HA or H1. Both are equally acceptable and correct. Yeah. I know a lot of people use HA because it's like easy to remember because it's the alternate hypothesis A, you know. Okay. So what we're going to now talk about is the whole idea of hypothesis testing, which essentially is the point and is probably how they're going to test this section in the exam. They'll probably get you to do a hypothesis test because it involves all of this logic in like steps. Okay. So that is what we do. Essentially, we test our null hypothesis. And remember, the null hypothesis is always the null one, the one that is like, I don't want to say negative, but the one that assumes that there's no relationship or assumes that there's no difference in means. And then the alternate is the opposite. It does assume that there's a relationship, or it does assume that there is a difference. Okay, I'm using those words in particular because those are the types of things that you're going to be dealing with. So whenever you see someone using the word relationship between variables, that should trigger in your mind last session's correlation. Okay, because remember, that's what correlation does. You test to see if there's a relationship between 2 variables, if there's a correlation. And then, you know, we can tell various things from that relationship. But, however, what we're going to be doing this evening for t-tests is to see if there are differences between means. Okay, so significant differences. And that's the purpose of a t-test. All right. So at the end of the day, we just have all of these different statistical tests that we, you know, have to pick and choose and decide what's the most appropriate. And essentially, it always comes down to what you're trying to achieve, and that rests on the hypotheses. Okay, I'm going to do a different exercise with an example now, so don't bother with this one. Okay, so let's look at this scenario. A researcher believes that adventure programs are conducive to raising one's self-concept. Read self-esteem there. Don't know where concept came from, but it's like old term. Okay, scores on a self-concept scale for a group of boys before and after an adventure activity program are gathered. The score is always follows. And then, so if you get a question like this, they will give you the data and they will likely put it in a table because it's easier. Okay, you'll see this if you have a look at the past paper. And then you'll get a question like this. Formulate the null and alternate hypothesis for the above research problem. Okay, so let's, sorry, I just need to check what my next slide is. Yeah, okay. So let's quickly just do this. So based on this scenario that you've been given here, they are words that are clues, okay? So first of all, this researcher believes that adventure programs, so this is a variable, raises the boys' self-concept, which is the other variable. So as a recap, can we all please identify which is the independent variable here and which is the dependent variable? Pop your answers in the chat. I'm just waiting for a couple more responses. Okay, good. I think everyone's got it right so far. So the dependent variable, the thing that you are measuring, is the self-concept, and then the independent variable, the thing that gets manipulated, is the adventure programs in this case. Okay, good job. So if you struggle with this, like if the wording in your question is weird, always go back to remember that and say, which is the one I'm testing? You know, what's the thing I'm actually measuring? Then that is your dependent variable. What's the thing that changes, or the thing that you measure to decide this thing? You know, that kind of logic, that's the independent variable. Okay, good job, good job. Excellent. All right, so these are the things. Let us do this little example. So I just made a random blank Padlet. Now I'm just going to share this link in the chat because it's just, I think, easier than putting it in the chat. Control. Okay, there's a link to a little Padlet. I think, guys, just pop on there and formulate a null and an alternate hypothesis for this situation. So now you know what which variables there are, and we know what are we trying to measure. We're trying to see if the adventure programs raise one's self-concept. So this one has an effect on the other one. Okay. And then I will swap my screens. Okay, cool. Hopefully this will help, Pedro. So when you are formulating a hypothesis, you're trying to see what you are trying to test. So this researcher wants to know if these adventure programs have an effect on one's self-concept, right? So that is literally the words that you will use in your hypothesis. Keep it as absolutely simple as possible. Just give it a shot. Give it a shot. And then yeah, we'll chat about. I'll give you the answer now. Okay. I've now lost the screen I was sharing for the question. I wish I could share two screens at once. What I can do though. I'm going to post it here. You'll just have to click on it to open it. We're definitely on the right track. Okay, so trustworthy chipmunk. I love the names it randomly makes up. What you're giving there is like a title, right? But we need to be making a null hypothesis and an alternate hypothesis. Okay, excellent. So I'm a little bit worried about time, so I'm going to start my commentary. Okay, so because remember, we don't have a huge amount of context here. It hasn't necessarily, you don't know just from the screenshot if you're looking for a relationship or a difference or something. So that means that Wasima and the others, those of you that said relationship, are all correct, just in this circumstance. Okay, so yes, if we were specifically looking for a difference, Wasima's got it completely. Just remember to always list the null hypothesis first, guys, okay? So participation in and its adventure programs has no significant effect on an individual's self-concept. Absolutely. So that's saying that there is no effect. That's the purpose of a null hypothesis. That there's no effect, or there's no relationship, or there's no difference. Those are basically the three phrases that you will be using. Okay. And then H1, participation in these adventure programs does have a significant effect. Okay, so it's literally the same thing, but you're changing the two words. Like it doesn't have an effect and it does have an effect. Yes, and then yeah, the same thing can be true if we were looking for a relationship. There is, okay, so whoever Kitty is, it's you've got it the other way around. So H0 is there is no relationship between adventure activities and concepts, and then yeah, your HA would be that. Okay, no. So remember to use the same language, that if you're saying relationship in the first one, you must say relationship in the next one. Yeah. So it would be there is no relationship between the participating in adventure programs and one's self-concepts, and then alternatively, adventure program, there is a relationship between, etc. Okay. And so the exact particular wording isn't really what we're looking at. We're making sure that you've got the logic. So the null you've put as the nothing, the no relationship, the negative thing. And the alternate is the one that you would be hoping to be able to accept. And then, yeah, that you've got the variables happening in the correct order and in the right way. Okay. Okay, so yeah, I know it feels contradictory, but it's literally the purpose is to give both. So the null hypothesis is that there will be, so it's like you're proposing that there's no relationship, and then you're also proposing that it's possible that there might be a relationship. And then how we decide is we do the hypothesis test. Okay. And then the result you get from whichever statistical test you do determines which hypothesis is correct. Okay, so let me go back to my slides, and then that will help this whole thing. Okay. Oh no, I clicked the wrong button. Gracious. Okay, so we are now going to talk about hypothesis testing. So what is the point of all this, right? Like, cool story. You can say these things, you can say, all right, you think nothing's going to happen, but something can happen. How do we determine this? Okay. And something that is important is what we're testing is statistical significance. So sometimes you can just look at data and say, well, obviously that one's different to that one, but you need to mathematically determine statistical significance, and that is what you do through these tests. Okay. Right, so just that is the point of statistical significance. It's just that you can say there is a significant difference based on a particular criteria that you set. Okay, and essentially the criteria that you set is how much error you allow for in the situation. Okay, but we will get to that. I think I'm going to have to, we're not going to get through both t-tests tonight. So what I'm going to do is actually schedule 2 hours for next week so we can finish off t-tests and then do the NSS if everyone's cool with that. Okay. Anyway, so the next thing that you will be asked is what is a one-tailed or a two-tailed test? And what is a one-tailed or a two-tailed hypothesis? I've had them forever, but I love it because the thing with the cat and the tails just helps understand this concept. Okay. So remember way back when we started stats and we were talking about normal distribution, and it creates this kind of graph that looks like this, the parabola, right? So it's symmetrical, it's called the bell curve. And what we have on either end are the tails. And so how you determine statistical significance is that the answer that you get from your test must fall within a particular range, and that is called the critical area. Okay, and then that is determined depending on the test by various things that you don't need to worry about right now. All right. So just to get this idea of one or two tails, so essentially when you're wording your hypotheses, sometimes you get a situation where a hypothesis is directional. And what we mean by that is that there's only one tail, there's only one direction that essentially your data can go towards. And what this means is when you're trying to test something and you assume that there is some kind of effect. So if I say, and it's like this example that we just did. Okay, so the researcher wanted to test if, well, he thinks that adventure programs have, and he said, a positive effect on one's self-concept. So by saying that there's a positive effect, we're just saying outright that there's either a positive effect or there's no effect at all. We won't be able to tell if there's a negative effect. We'd have to do something else to test that. And that's what a one-tailed test means. It means it's directional. It means that the critical area will only be like one side of the graph. I wish you guys could see me now. I'm literally blocking out half of this with my hand on my screen like you can see me. Honestly, I've had a long day. But yeah, essentially, that is what that means. Okay, and really, I know this is a lot to get around, and it's just about repetition and going over it again. We'll do another thing. Okay, and then you have a two-tailed test. This is when it's general. So if I just say to you, does intake of caffeine affect students' exam results? You're either going to say yes or no, right? You would test, the null hypothesis would be that caffeine has no effect on students' exam results, and the alternate hypothesis would be that caffeine intake does affect, or there is a significant effect, however you want to say it, on student results. And so I haven't given a direction. I haven't said that there was a negative or that there was a positive, okay? So that means that that is two-directional. It is two-tailed, because it's possible that our critical value that we end up with could fall on either side of 0. Okay, so what may help to relate this to is our correlation that we went over last time. Because remember, you can have a negative correlation where R is a negative value, and then you can have a positive correlation where the R value is a positive number. And essentially, if you do a two-tailed test on a correlation, then you're saying that it's possible, I don't know, there may be a positive or a negative correlation. Let's find out. And then depending on the number that you get, that would tell you, right? But if I say I'm testing a one-tailed hypothesis that caffeine, there is a positive correlation between caffeine and student marks. I'm stating a direction, I'm narrowing it down, I'm saying it's that or it's nothing. And that would be the difference, okay? Yes, Kirsten, you got it exactly. So it's in the when you state the hypothesis, it can be that there's either negative or positive effects. And I'm saying negative and positive because that's just usually how these situations are worded, okay, at this level. But yeah, in your distribution, you could have results on either side and a greater range. If you're just saying it's a one-tailed test, you are limiting that critical value to one direction, either positively or negatively. so the best thing is if someone asks you if a situation would call for a one-tail or a two-tailed test, just visualize this cat with the two tails and the graph in the background. And it's like, think about it like the cat is confused. He doesn't know which direction to go in, right? So if you say, yo, kitty cat, move out the way, he has a choice. He can go left, he could go right. That's a two-tailed test. It's being split in two directions. But if you say, hey, kitty cat, get out my way to the left, you're stating a direction, you've stated to the left. And obviously in stats, that would mean like negatively. Okay. So that may be useful when you encounter the situation. So yeah, Kirsten, depending on the situation and the type of test that you're doing, some experiments just lend themselves more to one-tailed tests, and then some limit you to two-tailed tests. And the purpose of this is that it's all to do like on the back end with maths and how much error can happen. And essentially, you're going to now encounter what is called a t-table of critical values that you will be provided should you require it. And then you have to know whether you did it one-tailed or a two-tailed test to see which column you are looking in to find your critical value. Okay. So yeah, all of these things like fall in step and it ends up making sense. Yeah, essentially there is a greater chance of error in a two-tailed test, but there are obviously ways of accounting for that. Okay. Alrighty, let me go to what's the next slide. Okay, this is just another visual depiction, so this just may help. Okay, you guys don't need to deal with p-values at this level, don't worry about it, but it can help in this instance. Just think, when you see p-value, just think critical value. Okay, so the p-value or the alpha value that you're given, you'll always be given it, and it will pretty much always be 0.05. Just make a note of that somewhere, and that will determine essentially the range of this critical region. And yeah, it's all just to do with this decision making when you find your critical regions. Okay. So yeah, this is just a visual depiction that a one-tailed test has one critical region. Okay, on either side, it depends. And then a two-tailed test has two critical regions. Okay. And in some cases, and it's not a test you guys are doing this year, at an honors level, you will encounter something called a Z test. And that would mean that you would do things to the alpha value, but whatever. Just at this point, just realize that a two-tail can have two critical regions and a one-tail can have only one. And so what happens when you, and I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but when you make this decision, when you've done this hypothesis test, it's the last step. And you now need to decide, okay, do I accept the null hypothesis as true? Or do I reject the null hypothesis as true? And the thing that helps you make that decision is if your value falls within this critical region, mathematically. Okay. I think that because this is confusing, and we're going to do a 2-hour session next time, let's spend the time and let's do this activity. Okay, so everyone go back to the Padlet. I'm going to screenshot this and put it on there. Okay, so to practice, sorry, just pasting it on so you guys can see them. All right, so, and this is really all the information you need to write these hypotheses just for this activity of practicing how you word a one-tailed hypothesis and how you word a two-tailed hypothesis. Okay. So let's just say we have two groups of students. Let's say there are two groups, of psychology first years, and these were the grades that were recorded after a class test. I mean, oof, for group B, like those are low. Okay, so essentially, is there a significant difference between the groups? in order to test that, we would have to do a t-test. So that's not the question we're looking at now for this activity. I want you to state a one-tailed null and alternate hypothesis and a two-tailed null and alternate hypothesis for this situation. So we want to know, is there a difference between group A and group B? This one just requires a little bit of out-of-the-box like reasoning with words. I want to see how we go. Okay, let's pop on the Padlet. I think just for this activity, post your posts in a different color so that we can see. Yeah, here's the question. Usually it's easier to start with the two-tailed one, and I will give you a freebie. The one-tail, the null hypothesis remains the same, regardless if it's a one or a two-tail, just that there is no difference. Yeah, Luca, absolutely. That is what the H0 will be for both instances if it was a one or a two-tailed. I just want you guys to practice the formulating the words for a hypothesis. Is everyone just hoping someone else will post? Ignore the numbers. You don't even need to look at the numbers for now. Because remember, you make a hypothesis before you've even got numbers. Okay. Okay, we have a brave, grateful quack. What is a quacker? Anyway. Okay, so yeah, H0, there is no difference between class A and class B's test scores. That is a perfectly acceptable null hypothesis. 2 marks. Good job. Okay, and then regardless of, so let's see for which one is one tail here. I love the way you just threw them out there and like you didn't label them. Anyway, okay, so this one, class A has performed higher on average than class B. Yes, that is a one-tailed hypothesis. You are stating a direction. You are saying that the one class is better than the other class. Okay. And then alternately, okay, so these, okay, no. So these are both one-tail examples of an alternate hypothesis. Just the other way around. I assume you meant for this to be A. Okay, can everyone, if everyone's looking at this one, can everyone understand that these are examples of a one-tailed hypothesis? Okay, so a two-tail one is that you just need to keep it broad, that there is a difference. Okay, so essentially, like when I was teaching you guys now just about writing null and alternate hypotheses, those were all two-tail alternate hypotheses. If you look here, right? So you just like on this instance on the right at the top here, adventure programs have no effect, and then adventure programs do have an effect. You're not saying that there's a positive or a negative. You're saying it's open-ended. In other words, yeah, it could be either. That is a two-tail. Yeah, you're saying that it could be two sides of the coin. Absolutely, that's a good analogy. Let's see this one over here. Yeah, so no relationship, and then H1 for a one-tail, there is a relationship. Okay, so you just got it. The one-tail, you would, and there's different ways you could word it. You could say, yeah, like class A has performed better than class B, or there is a significant, class A has performed significantly higher or better or whatever than class B. You know, anything like that, as long as you are establishing a direction, you would get the mark for that as being a one-tail. Okay, and then a two-tail would literally simply say that there is no difference. Okay, and what's important, so let me highlight this by opening this again. The question is there a significance? And they've used the word difference. Okay, so it's important that you use the same words in your hypothesis. This researcher in this example is looking for a difference. So your hypotheses must state that there's either not a difference, so a null hypothesis either way, and then, or it would say that the mean for group A is significantly higher than the mean for group B, right? That's a one-tailed alternative. It could be, you could state the other way around. For whatever reason, you could say that group B performed better than group A, and that is, yeah, it's just, there's always more than one version of a one-tailed hypothesis. You will just get the clue from the context that you're given in the example. Okay, so yeah, and I will be going over this with that past paper. I'd like to actually just go through the past paper in our next session, actually. Like we'll cover t-test because we run out of time now. We'll cover just the calculations for t-tests. The process for both t-tests is the same. The formulae are just different. So it won't take as long. And then we'll go through that past paper. Okay, but I am going to ask you guys, please, it's important to go and read up on and try to practice the t-test situation, just so that you come in with a little bit of context into the session, because it'll help, because then also you'll be able, you know, you'll have like directed questions that we can tackle. Okay, so also I don't know if I'm like fuzzy, it's because my mic is broken. I'm just using my laptop one. Take a lot on the way. Okay, so a two-tailed hypothesis, alternate hypothesis for this would be that there is no significant difference between the two groups, or you could say between group A and group B, whatever. The important part there is that you said there's no difference. Okay. Yeah, Shane, you're writing on the 15th, hey? Do you guys have, is anyone writing anything before this one, though? No one's writing anything next week. Okay, next week is study week. Yeah, so actually having our session on the Thursday is probably a good thing, because you would have spent that time during that week to do some revision on this stuff. Okay. You can't see the notes. Weird. Maybe they just aren't visible to you guys. I'll go and check that now. Okay, cool. Let me just check. I just want to finish off this thing on hypothesis testing for the evening. Okay. Okay, question. But with the two-tail, what is the H0 if the HA is there is no? So the, oh, did I? So the HA is always that there is some kind of difference, or there's a particular direction of a difference. The H0 is that there is no difference, and it remains the same whether it's a 1 or a 2 tail. It's always just that there's no difference. The difference, ironically, the difference in the decision comes in the alternate hypothesis. Cool. Okay, so hypothesis testing. Okay, this is just an important concept, and this is really entirely the purpose of learning this. And yeah, let's not get too distracted by the maths. What's important here is understanding this process. Okay, there are 4 steps. There are always 4 steps to test a hypothesis. Okay, they are logical and they flow one after the other and eventually allow for us to make this decision. Okay, so yes, we have collected data. Cool, you presented with data in your exam. You will then first be asked to state your hypotheses. Okay, so whenever asked to do that, that's what we've just spent this whole 45 minutes doing, is formulating your hypotheses. And it's important at this stage to get that wording right, whether it's a 1 or a 2 tail. Okay, then you select, step 2 is to select the appropriate test to use. Okay, in the notes that I will make sure are up now after this, there's a little decision tree that helps, but I'll say verbally now. The 2 tests that you would have to do is a correlation or a t-test. And a correlation looks for a relationship between 2 variables, and a t-test tests for difference. Okay, so those are going to be the keywords. They may even be nice and tell you which test to do. That's entirely possible as well, because this is undergrad level. Okay. Anyway, that is step 2. Pick the right test. Okay, step 3 is to actually do the thing. You calculate the statistics. So you go through the whole thing, you draw your table if necessary, and you run through the formula, and you are presented with a value depending on your formula. Okay, so let's say we're doing a hypothesis test with correlation, because you guys are familiar with that now. I now have an R value. Let's say my R value is 0.8. Okay, so just by getting an R value, you can already make some decisions in terms of interpreting what that means, right? We know that that is a strong correlation, and because it's a positive number, we know that that is a positive relationship. Okay, and then now you need to make a decision to accept or to reject the null hypothesis. And in terms of correlation, this is a very easy process, because if you would accept the null hypothesis, you would get an R value of 0, and then that means there's no correlation. Okay, but then getting the R value, you reject the null hypothesis and therefore conclude that the alternate hypothesis is true. Okay, that's the steps. That is what you're aiming for. You're stating your hypotheses, you're doing the things you need to do, and then you are making the decision as to which one is true. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. Are there any questions on this concept of hypothesis testing while we're here? Cool. So also what might help is, you guys may have seen, remember I shared that link to the, what are those things called? The videos with the quizzes in them? My brain is now tired. Anyway, those things. I have put some videos on there already, like with correlation. And then I'm going to add some with hypothesis testing and then with t-test as well. And those are going to be very good for you for exam prep as well. Okay. All right. Righty, so we have a couple of minutes. Let me just, I mean, while we're here, just go and see why the notes aren't appearing. And then if anyone has any questions, please post them. It is there. It's called Inferential Statistics Notes. And it's in purple. Okay, it might not be in purple for everyone, but it's there. And it seems to be visible. Would you guys all mind just checking? And then, yeah, obviously, if everyone still can't find it, then let me know. Let me share my screen quickly so I can show you what it looks like. Okay, I'm in group 1 at the moment. And because I'm like a goldfish, when I go to group 2 to put it, I don't choose the same colors. But this is what it looks like, inferential stats notes. Okay. Yeah, I actually do recommend printing it out. Yeah, then you can, play with it. You can write notes on it, things like that. Okay. Yeah, and it will take you through correlation. It will take you through identifying scatter plots. And I like when I made these, I was watching Rick and Morty. So if you're not a fan, sorry. There are examples with worked examples, and then it takes you through the t-tests. Okay, so please, 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 before our next session, go read through at least this section in this note pack. Okay, and the textbook would be useful as well, but in particular this, because I can then use these examples. Okay, that's the t-table I was talking about. You will be given this if you need it. No one would ever have to try and remember all of these. That's insane. Trying to see what else is actually included in here, because I edited this quite a lot this year for my honors students. Yes, okay. Yeah, explains the one-tail, two-tail with examples and takes you through the hypothesis test for each thing. Yeah. Cool. Okay, group 2's got it. Is anyone here from group 3? Just to check. But I'll also go and check. And you got it. Excellent. You also can't find it. Interesting. Okay, so maybe group 3 is hidden for some reason. I'm so excited to move to Brightspace, guys. You have no idea. It is so much more user friendly. Most importantly for you, I mean, shame you guys aren't going to experience it unless you stick with us for honors. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, it's there. It is also purple. And it says it is available. Yeah, so the content questions, yeah, so they are going to be application based. And at the end of the day, the important part always, the majority of the marks that you'll get, especially with this quantitative analysis stuff, is on interpreting the result. Yeah. And also what is cool is that they are always separated. So if you mess up your formula and you get the wrong answer or something, you can still get full marks for the next question, which would ask you to make a decision, because we do like logic marking. So we'd see, okay, well, would you reject it if that was the correct answer? Do you know what I mean? So basically there's no like you're not going to compound mistakes that's logically built on. So that's nice. Do you not have this little arrow at the top corner here? Are you sure? Why? Well, that's just remarkably silly. Okay, well, what may be useful then is to scroll down, to not scroll like in here, scroll all the way on the right. So you use this scroll because that the block only has so much, and then you scroll within there, so it'll keep going. So just use the far right scroller, and then it'll get to the next thingies. Oh no, it doesn't. It keeps loading. Oh my God, that is so irritating. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. If I had known, I wouldn't have done it like this. Um, okay, I'll try and remove this and just make Wakelet its own thing then, because that's ridiculous. Even if you click, honestly. I can't believe no one's ever flagged that with EdTech before. Like, wow. Wow. Anyway, okay. Rambling. Yeah, or I'll move the wakelet to the bottom. Yeah. Okay. Um, okay. Yeah, that's it for this evening then. I bid you guys good luck for your studying, and yeah, I will see you guys then next week, Thursday, and I will send an announcement about all of that. So the fireworks are starting. So um, sorry guys, lost my train of thought completely. What was I saying? Hmm. Okay, assignment 2 marks. The absolute latest will be Tuesday. Okay. Thanks everyone. I really do appreciate you coming and engaging, and also dealing with my like losing train of thoughts because